My name is Glen Carolin. I'm the director of the NRA-ILA Grassroots Programs and Campaign Field Operations Division. I've been an employee of NRA for 26 years. And my main goal is to make sure that NRA's 5 million members and the millions of other Americans who support our mission are actively involved in contacting their lawmakers on legislation and volunteering for candidates for office that we support and turning out to vote on Election Day. The NRA was founded in 1871, following the Civil War, by a group of Union Army officers who were obviously pleased their side had prevailed, but were very impressed with the marksmanship skills demonstrated by their Southern soldiers. So as our country reunified, they wanted to make sure there would be a national entity set up to promote firearm safety, training, and marksmanship. The NRA Institute for Legislative Action, or NRA-ILA by its acronym, was founded in 1975. And I think a need arose for us to formalize our government affairs to a higher degree because we saw a new push for additional gun control restrictions. I think they fomented themselves in the aftermath of some high-profile political assassinations and some civil unrest in cities across the country, that a theory was being pushed that if we could somehow restrict access to guns by law-abiding American citizens, we would see a reduction in these types of incidents. Well, NRA knew very quickly that many of those proposals run afoul of the Second Amendment to our Constitution. And secondly, we saw very clearly that gun control doesn't affect criminals, who by definition are lawbreakers, but does impede the right of law-abiding citizens to choose for themselves whether or not to own a firearm. So we saw sort of this coming storm, that there was a very heavy push to restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens. So in 1975, the NRA-ILA was formalized, and we've had a pretty big footprint in the government affairs realm ever since 1975. And our staff and the different departments and what we do and how we do it has grown exponentially as well. The official name of the division is called the Grassroots Programs and Campaign Field Operations Division. We're a staff of 17 individuals. 12 of those individuals are headquartered here at NRA's headquarters in Fairfax, Virginia, with the other 5 being strategically stationed in the field in different parts of the country. About 4 or 5 of the staff members here function similar as to a legislative aid would on Capitol Hill. Virtually 90% of the inquiries that come into this building of a legislative or political inquiry are handled by my department. The rest of the department is really involved with building our grassroots programs, going out recruiting volunteers, educating them on issues of concern, and then providing practical training on how they can make an impact in both the legislative and political arenas. We have a lot of interpersonal communication with our members and supporters, be that over the phone, via email, or very often in person at various events that we may be attending. These can be NRA events and non-events alike. We have a pretty sophisticated digital operation. We have a very heavy footprint in social networking. We still communicate with our members using our website, using direct mail, using phone. So we're a full-service operation to try to deliver a message and have a conversation with our supporters in as many different forms as possible, understanding that in this day and age, there are a lot of different ways that people get their news and inform their opinions, and we want to make sure we have a presence in as many of those different forms as possible. My main role as director of the Grassroots Programs and Campaign Field Operations Division isn't necessarily to determine which bills we're going to support or oppose, or which candidates we're going to support or oppose, but rather, once those decisions are made, to make sure that there's collateral grassroots involvement about educating and empowering our supporters to take an active role in either supporting or defeating legislation, or working on behalf of a candidate for office to get him or her elected. It's a constant recruitment process, working with NRA members and non-members alike who support our mission and support the Second Amendment, providing them the educational foundation they need to understand legislation or understand why it is we're taking a position on a particular candidate for office, and then providing practical grassroots training so that they can take that fundamental support for the NRA and translate it into practical activism that will actually move the needle in our favor. The decision on sort of what legislation we're going to support or oppose, or what level of priority, is dictated by our federal and state and local affairs lobbying team that have a presence on Capitol Hill in each of the 50 state legislatures. Now, once that decision is made and we sort of prioritize which bills are going to be most pressing for the NRA, my main role is to make sure that, utilizing our staff and our volunteers, they're actively contacting their lawmakers to reflect the NRA's position from the grassroots. We want to be strategic in our volunteer recruitment outreach effort to get the biggest return on that investment. So we spend a lot of time at what we call gun owners' natural resources. And what I mean is we'll have a very heavy presence at gun shows and shooting ranges and gun and hunting clubs, the places where our members tend to congregate. So to use a gun analogy, rather than using a shotgun approach, we use rifle shot precision to try to make sure that we are speaking to the people who are going to be most receptive to our message, and hopefully if they support our message, will be willing to take the appropriate action if we help guide them and give them the training to be effective in doing so. The NRA is a single-issue organization, so the only issues we involve ourselves in are firearm-related issues. We have a diversity of reasons as to why people join the NRA. Some like to hunt, some like to collect guns, some are competitive shooters, some own guns for self-defense, some it's all the above. But the unifying thread that runs through all NRA members is their support for freedom. I think the fact that they have such passion for this constitutional protection, we simply reinforce that when we talk to them by telling them how a particular piece of legislation or a particular candidate's positions would positively or negatively impact that fundamental freedom. So I think one of the built-in advantages we have, or a number of built-in advantages we have, is we definitely have a very large membership base, and beyond our 5 million members, we have millions of other Americans who consider themselves part of our fraternity. They are very active. They are very passionate, but what I think really makes them unique is, in addition to this appreciation for the fundamental freedom, they're very knowledgeable about its historical significance, and they guard it very jealously. I would submit to you that if you asked anybody in this building why it is they work for the NRA or what motivated to join the NRA, they would come back with a singular word of freedom. It's just that ingrained in our DNA as NRA members, as gun owners, as supporters of the Second Amendment. What we do internally, however, is we are constantly evaluating our programs and their success or their need for improvement. One of the things that I really pride ourselves on from the Grassroots perspective is we never stand still. We look to quantify the results of our endeavors to try to see if there's a causal relationship between things that we've done and our relative success. There's constant evaluation as soon as an election cycle is over to find out what did we do well that we want to replicate and expand for the next cycle. What is it that we tried that maybe didn't work so well, and do we want to continue to invest in that program or go in a different direction? But I think one of the great stories about the NRA, and in particular its grassroots success, is even though we've been very successful, we never rest on our laurels. We never take a day off from planning on how to improve and evaluating what we've done, because we believe we can always do better, and this issue is just so important to us that we want to make sure that we're always working hard to improve our operations to get more and more people educated on the issue and empowered to take action. Well, I think it's important first to understand at least what we consider NRA to be true grassroots, because it's two sides to the same coin. There's an educational component and there's an empowerment component. I think that's where I would start, is educational awareness, to make sure my community was aware of the various resources that I can offer and why it is that I'm an important member of the community. I would then look to target within my community those who I think are going to be most receptive or most interested to what I have to offer. And then I would look at whatever my agenda is and try to identify from those people who now have an interest and knowledge about my organization, my association, to give them the tools and training they need to actively assist with promoting that agenda, whether it's promoting awareness to the general community, whether it's speaking to a local city council about funding, whatever the case may be. But I think it's important that folks, first of all, understand the mission of the organization, are educated on the positions that you take and the needs that you have, and then are trained to take that knowledge and information and transform it into some sense of activism effectively. And that requires training them in the process of how to effectively communicate with a lawmaker, how to write an effective letter to the editor, how to be active on social networking. Sometimes I think we have people who are extremely knowledgeable about an issue, but really have no fundamental way to take that knowledge and transform it into something productive. Other times you have people with a lot of energy, but who may lack the background or the knowledge. So I think it's important to blend the two components of both education and empowerment when setting your strategies. It's certainly easier to mobilize people when there's an immediate end goal, whether that's an opportunity or that's a threat. But our job in defending the Second Amendment and organizing gun owners is a 24/7, 365 endeavor. So there are periods that are less busy and thus more challenging. And I think the word I would use to help describe what to do in those situations are community. Part of sustaining a grassroots momentum isn't just, again, organizing around a particular bill or a particular election, but also having that sense of community where people can get together to socialize or talk about issues or just network from time to sustain those relationships in an informal way, so that when the opportunity the crisis does emerge, you already have the built-in network who know one another and are willing to now kind of roll up their sleeves and get to work. Truly, for an organization to be grassroots, and I don't think there is a better grassroots organization than the NRA, it has to be an organic movement from the roots up. That's the genesis of the term grassroots. And by building these localized networks, we're increasing our footprint in local communities, because a lot of people are now seeing that their neighbors, their friends, their soccer coaches, their PTN members are just like everybody else in the community, but they also happen to be NRA members who are very active and committed to protecting the Second Amendment to our Constitution.